Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
Timely payments, rescinding stop work orders, and monitoring long-term impacts are top priorities as agencies restart operations. We'll also look at key takeaways from PSC's Vision Conference with CEO Jim Carroll. Jim, thanks for joining me.
Carrie, thank you so much for having me on.
You are coming off 2 days of the PSC Vision Conference. Let's start there. What were the biggest insights that you heard over those 2 days of discussions?
Well, I'll say 3 insights. One was it was a brutal way to start the Monday after Thanksgiving holiday, but we had to accommodate the really great speakers, including really some wonderful keynote speakers. Next year it will not be the Monday after Thanksgiving. So for all of our members, for this event, we're thankfully able to get a better date. But more importantly, as I mentioned, really was hearing from some of the leadership in the administration about what is their projections for 2026 and the how the money as being appropriated by Congress as the budget request and where they expect it to go. And so one was just the amount of money, which is something worth talking about. The other thing is really the use of AI and how the embrace of AI by the federal government is rapid, but it's also a bit unknown. We're moving forward in this space of the government using AI without everyone necessarily understanding all the implications. So I think so far those are the 2 big takeaways that we've been able to summarize. And it's a great event for our members and a few guests.
What did you hear about this administration's take on industry partnerships?
I think we have to sort of look back at DOD. I think DOD with Secretary Hegseth is a good example of that. As you recall, in November, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth met with our members and the folks that do defense contracting and said that they really do want to do a radical revolutionary overhaul of the FAR, and especially in the sense of producing deliverables and measuring outcomes based on performance and getting this done right, and how the military, how the branches within DOD have been tasked with coming up with orders in January, by mid-January, 60 days, in terms of how they think we can best streamline the process. And our hope is that this proposal really has legs, and we think it does. There is support in the Capitol Hill, there is support in the administration, and of course, we, the leading trade association for companies that do business with the federal government, we're completely supportive of most of these changes. There are things that we've been asking for years, that would really expedite the awards. Hopefully, with the grace of God, cut down on the number of appeals following an award, which seems to be a bit of an epidemic of companies now just expect there to be an appeal. And so, we're really very hopeful that this will stick, and we're optimistic that it will. And so that's one of the major things. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the amount of money in government services, and there was discussion about that yesterday this week from the Assistant Secretary of War, that there really is going to be an extraordinary amount of money, $850 billion at DOD, with at least $180 billion toward services. And that's what are and I'm proud to say, patriotic companies that want to do the right thing for the warfighter and the taxpayer are eager to jump on board.
I'm speaking with Jim Carroll, CEO of the Professional Services Council. Jim, tell us more about what you heard about the deployment of AI from the government agencies and within the contractor community.
Yeah, so, within the government, we had speakers from across the government. As I said, Assistant Secretary of War, Michael Cadnazzi, who handles the industrial base policy, talked about an additional $180 billion, $200 billion in services, and how the use of AI in services can change, and how there needs to be flexibility because of AI, that when some of these contracts call for, 100 seats to be filled, that there is enough flexibility that contractors can come back to the government and say, hey, we're going to use some, AI, some other advanced technology. We can reduce the number of personnel, from 100 to 80 people. And in the past, there's been some resistance. Both the Department of War and some of the other departments, really stress that they want flexibility because of AI. I'll say one thing that was interesting, and we've seen and heard this from members, is that there are a fair number of new companies who have never put in bids for government work that are using AI to not only write their proposals, but as I mentioned, also the use of AI to appeal. I mean, it just seems like it's a press of the AI button, if you will, and an appeal is generated. And we need to get away from that, for valid, justifiable awards. Let's move forward and deliver, good results. And so we're very optimistic. The recognition that AI has some limitations to it, but that it can deliver fast results is something that will be very interesting to see in 2026.
Jim, one of the things that you and I've talked about, we've talked about it with a lot of contracting folks on the show, is the uncertainty about the federal government workload for contractors. I'm wondering what you heard from your members over the course of this conference, especially as we're sitting right now, just post-shutdown and possibly pre-shutdown in January. What are you hearing, and what is PSC's advice?
Harry, don't jinx us. No more government shutdowns. We're tracking January 30th very closely. We had very senior meetings in the White House, in the West Wing, with a couple different meetings because of the shutdown, to talk about the impact that it is having on results, and the impact it is having on protecting the homeland. And so, what we told them, in addition to the impacts, is when the government gets up and running, because shutdowns end. So this was a record-breaking one, but shutdowns do end. And as soon as they end, it's to tell the individuals in the departments, immediately start processing these invoices, get these payments out the door. There are a fair number of companies, especially in the small to mid-size, that really did not have stable cash flow. They really were hurting. We saw some layoffs, or at least, sidelining of key employees, and it really presented a huge financial strain on the companies, which flows down to the employees, which flows down to the communities. And so that's, what we asked for. We asked, in addition, that the momentum on getting new contracts out the door be, jump-started as fast as possible. Historically, it takes quite a while after a shutdown for things to resume, sort of a normalcy. And, we don't have time for that. In addition, to the financial impact, truly the impact on national security. The world is facing new and dangerous threats that seem to be magnifying every day. And our contractors are able to deliver world-class results and protection. And unless they get up and running immediately, those threats are very real.
Are you seeing that kind of activity coming out of the government agencies now, a couple of weeks on from shutdown?
We're actually pleasantly surprised. And I hate to say that word, surprised, but in the past, it does seem to be a bit of a lag. Our message seems to be delivered. We're getting payments out quickly. Maybe not all and not every department, but it seems, to be beating historic records in terms of getting payments out. Obviously, some, companies are still hurting, waiting to get paid for work that they performed. But, we're happy so far. But Terry, I can't believe you brought up January 30th of next year. Is this a lull between shutdowns? I hope not. I hope that they're able to resolve, some of the significant issues, healthcare, things like that. But, as we've talked about, there's not a lot of work days up on Capitol Hill, and we just cannot have another shutdown.
Jim Carroll is CEO of the Professional Services Council. Jim, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Terry. Have a great week.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts. News Network.